Hey y'all, Chris here, Ghost of GBT on Reddit. Let's do some more chart analysis. This week, just gonna go through all of these, I guess, because I got some extra time, and there's not really a clear distribution in terms of upvotes, so we'll just kind of go down the list here. So, we'll start at the top here. So, first one was TSLA Long after it retests 190, so let's take a look at that. Yeah, it looks pretty parabolic here to the downside. It's getting down to the point where it might need a bounce. Let's take a look at the weekly chart. Yeah, so this actually looks really good right around 190. You've got the 200-week moving average right there. You've got some support, kinda... I mean, it's kind of on support now, but what I usually like to see is for a stock to actually knife through support and then bounce afterwards. Kind of like it did here, right? It kind of knifed through the 200-day moving average and then bounced, because that gives any longs that are still holding it, hoping that it's going to bounce right off the 200 moving average, whatever it is, 200 weeks or 200 days, whatever the support is, any longs that are holding it are going to probably get shaken out once it kind of breaks through. And so that's your sort of cue that now all the longs that we're going to sell have sold, and so that would be a good spot to grab it. So yeah, I do like if it retests 190, if it keeps going. I just would probably want to see, some sort of indication of strength. Maybe it goes sideways or it has a green day, sort of like it did over here, where you have like a strong green day. The close is near the highs or something along those lines. So yeah, overall I like it. Tesla's a strong, I don't know if it's a strong company, but it's a strong kind of hypey type of Momo stock. So yeah, looks good. After a retest 190, yeah. All right, analysis of T Long. I think we actually did AT&T last week, or maybe the week before, but let's take a look at it anyway. 1 day chart. Yeah, I definitely remember this. Actually, it was someone that was asking if they should short it last time, and I had said at the time that the short was sort of over. That was kind of when it was sitting here like 41.5 or so. So it was like a couple weeks ago that we looked at this, and now you can see it's sort of started to kind of sit on this support. It's not the greatest support in terms of the long-term trend, but it is sort of still above this level thing. So if it breaks down in here, then I would call this sort of broken, at least temporarily. Now, if it starts to hold 39.5, then maybe we get a similar type of pattern where it breaks the bear flag here, shakes everybody out, and then bounces off of 39.5. And so that may be your long entry. The other option, I guess, is that it holds this sort of 40.5 or $40 level that it's at right now, and kind of comes over these highs, 41.25, 41.29, high of 41.38. So it seems like maybe if it gets over 41.50, it could possibly get moving again. So overall, I do like it for a long. If I was going to buy it right now, I just keep a tight stop on it, like 40.25 or something, just underneath these last lows. Give it a little bit of room to kind of fluctuate back and forth around those lows. But you can see it actually did have a little bit of a stall after it went through the previous highs. So we went through this breakout, and then we had a little bit of a stall, which I think is sort of what it's sitting on right now. So that 40.5 level seems mildly significant. I think as long as it holds that, it's in good shape for a long. So overall, looks pretty good. The other thing is this one's going to depend a lot on the S&P 500. So if SPY stays, I mean, SPY's been kind of sideways, but as long as it stays sideways or goes up, AT&T is going to be fine. If SPY breaks under 216 and then potentially breaks under 214, we start to get back down towards the 200-day moving average. That's when AT&T is going to get hit. Just because it's a liquid stock, there's a lot of high-frequency traders in it. There's a lot of mutual funds and hedge funds that trade it. So this is a type of stock that if the market drops, this stock will drop. If the market goes up, this stock will go up. If the market just kind of goes sideways, this one may either go sideways with the market or maintain its current sort of longer term trend, which seems to be up at the moment. So there's AT&T. PSG. We looked at that one actually. Well, I looked at that one. I traded it short on Friday actually. So I traded this short for a small scalp just off of 330 area down into the 310. So it was a quick trade. I don't really know why this thing is going up. I do know there was some bad news on the 15th. I forget what it was. Let's check it out. PSG. So we do have pretty high short interest. 37.5 million shares in the float, so it's pretty low float. It did come pretty much all the way back up and just kind of close its gap. High of 348, 364, high there. So I think it's sort of right back up where it was. 360s, 362, then we had 370s, 390s. So over $4, obviously, it could really get moving. The only issue I have with it right now is just that it's pretty extended. If it came from, you know, $1.80 something here up to now over $3.50 in a relatively short period of time, though it was kind of in just two big spiky type of moves. So let's see what the news was there on the 15th. So this is obviously an issue. Delayed financials threaten default. So that's probably not good. Delay in filing annual report would result in default. I wonder when it's due. Earnings are September 6th, which is what, Tuesday? Yeah, so earnings are next week. Question is, will they actually file them? If they file them, not file its report by the August 15th deadline. Initiated discussions with lenders to address the issue. This is going to be a risky long if you're doing anything other than day trading it, just because you have that risk of default. Also, it looks like they had a PR here on the 2nd on Friday after hours. So it looks like maybe this press release leaked. The info on the for the press release leaked before the market closed, because you can see it actually took off around 3 p.m. And then the PR was released at 14:30. Let's see what the PR was. Termination of shareholder nomination agreement with Secret Capital. Shareholder nomination agreement previously entered into. Okay. So what was the actual agreement? Contained, among other things, certain board nomination rights of Sigurd, various standstill restrictions on Sigurd Capital, beneficial ownership of 17% of the company's issued and outstanding shares. Filed on March 28th, 2016. Strategic alternatives. So I'm wondering if this now allows Sigurd Capital here to sell. Let's take a look at the filings and see if we can find that March, what was it, March 28th? What the fuck was it? March 28th, 2016. Whoops. Let's do it this way. Filing type 8K. March 28th. So there's actually 3 of them. 101, 502. Alright, let's open up all of these guys. Doing a little more research on this one than I normally would. I mean, from a very basic standpoint, sure, it's fine for a long. It's got some momentum here. It's kind of coming over this 360 area, so it could push up to $4. from a technical standpoint, it looks good. The only thing I'd be worried about is if it halts or something like that, because that could definitely be a possibility. Further departure from the company. Okay, so that's not what we're looking for. In connection with a departure, okay, so that guy's been appointed. We're looking for this agreement with Sagard Capital. Okay. So now, if at any time Sagard Capital and control affiliates cease to hold a net long position, cease the Sagard Capital nominee. Certain standstill restrictions of the agreement until the later of. Okay, to include, among other things, restrictions on Sagard Capital soliciting or granting proxies to vote the company's common shares, submitting or being involved in shareholder proposals for consideration, being involved in litigation involving the company, nominating or seeking the removal of directors, acquiring beneficial ownership that exceeds a threshold, vote all of its common shares in the company in favor of. So there's obviously some kind of negative news here. Question is, I don't really know if this termination of those standstill provisions is significant in terms of what Sagard is now allowed to do. If they can just dump all of their shares now, then that's a significant concern because it's going to put a lot of selling pressure on the stock. If not, then fine. So I guess you just really have to dig into the actual details of that agreement and find out, you know, what they're gonna do. So anyway, there's PSG. I do like the chart. It's got lots of momentum. It's super liquid, so it's nice for day trading. I don't know that I would swing trade it holding it overnight, especially, well, it's also got their earnings coming up, so we have to see what happens on Tuesday morning when the market reopens. It should be interesting to see, to say the least. All right. UA Long. Seems like it's at an interesting area on the chart here. Stopped in the trend line support on Friday. Do you think of bounce? I did look at these charts. Let's take a look. Yeah, could be a bounce there. Yep. Let's just take a look at my software. So this looks like it's split. It's actually easier to look at it in Thinkorswim most likely, or on free stock charts, since DAS Trader apparently hasn't adjusted for the split yet. Gotta update my Silverlight. Yeah, this is like a big giant wedge. Sort of. So yeah, looks pretty good. Overall, I think you've pretty much nailed it down exactly. It looks good for a bounce right about now. I just want to see some sort of a reversal candle, that's all. So I agree on that. NVIDIA, yeah, we covered that one in a lot of detail in the first video. Let's actually just take a look at it again. I haven't looked at it in a couple weeks, so let's take a look. Yeah, this thing's flagging now over 60 bucks, which was significant from its earnings gap. So it seems like on the 60-minute chart here is where you're going to see the major sort of resistance. So this 63.50 is probably the key for another leg up. And currently it looks like, you know, you're still sort of in a choppy sideways range. You know, between like 63.50 and 61. So I think it would be, you know, if you're going to anticipate it, to be intelligent to do it sort of in the low 61s, low to mid 61s, unless it starts coiling up near these highs, near 63.50. If we kind of get like, you know, some up and down action up here, and the range tightens up, then that's actually even better, because that way we have, you know, an indication of strength that it is going to push through those highs, as well as a reduction in risk, because we don't have to have the stop loss all the way down to 61. Other than that, I would say, you know, buy this thing low 61s if you're going to anticipate it. Otherwise, you could just wait for the breakout through 63.50 and then see if it does a kind of retest thing. So, you know, if this is 63.50, it's kind of going sideways. Breakout, bounce, and then take off, right? So you want to see like the retest of those previous highs, and then off she goes. So overall, I still like NVIDIA. It's a strong company. They've got they just released good earnings recently, so yeah, I like it overall. GOOD, good. I actually had never even heard of this stock before, which is surprising since I have heard of most stocks and traded most stocks. But this one I had never seen before, and I actually really like it. It's a little bit thin in terms of volume, but I really like the overall look right now. It sort of reminds me of something I traded a couple of days ago, which is RMDS. Sort of has the same kind of look, where you've got a big kind of flat top level here, and it's kind of broken over that. I see the same type of pattern here on good. It's not quite as clean, because you are going to come into some fairly heavy resistance up in this area. I guess it is just kind of coming over that level right now. So if it reclaims that spot and holds it, so let's call it 1850. Let's say it breaks through 1850 and holds, then I think it can run. Otherwise, I would just treat it as a, you know, a simple like red to green type of move. It opens up under 1850, breaks out, runs to 1870 or 1880, something along those lines, and then fades back. You know, it depends on if it holds, but I like it overall. It did definitely have a fairly powerful breakout, a fairly clean breakout anyway. I wouldn't call it powerful just because the volume is kind of average, but overall I really like it. I don't think this is going to make a gigantic move. I don't think it's going to run to, you know, 21 bucks or 21.50, but it'll give you a good trade. The only reason I wouldn't potentially trade it is just that the volume is so low. It makes it difficult, really, since it doesn't have a huge range. Right? Since on Friday it went from a low of 1808 to a high of 1844, so less than a 40-cent range, you know, which is not a huge amount of range. And so that said, if you're going to trade a stock that has small range, you need to be able to do it with a lot of size. So like Sprint on Friday, you know, there was a, let me go back to the 5-minute chart. We had this like daily level at 635. We had this high here, 635, this one is 635, and then intraday it was flagging right underneath 635, right here. Right, so that's 634. It busted through 635. You know, it only popped like 8 cents, but with Sprint, the average volume is like 15, 20 million shares. So with this stock, you can do 10,000 or 20,000 shares of it, you know, and that 8 or 9 cents becomes 1,000 or 2,000 bucks, which is a lot nicer for that type of small move. You have a similarly small move on something like good, it's just not a big enough range to really get anything out of it. So that's really the only potential reason that I wouldn't trade it. If you were going to trade it, I would say treat it as more of a swing trade, because it's going to be slow and it's not going to have a huge range on any individual day. DG, long after 70. Good old Dollar General. Long after it bounces off 70, I mean, sure, I don't really see any. Let's see, what is this support here? I need to come a little bit lower than that. Seems like it has better support at like 65. But 70 could be some sort of an indication. I don't know. I mean, I just don't really like buying this type of stock. I don't like buying this type of chart because they had, it looks like they had bad earnings here on the 25th. Yeah, Q2 miss. So they had bad earnings. They broke through the 200-day moving average, kind of consolidated sideways here for a couple of days, and now it's fading lower. So it's not like this was just an overreaction if the company is now fading further after that point. So you're kind of just guessing that it's going to bounce, which I suppose is what we do all the time as technical analysts. But I mean, for me personally, I just don't really like buying that type of trade. I would want to see this get really low, and I'd want to see it get very extended, sort of like Tesla was, or if you look at something like this, NTP. You know, this thing went like straight up like a rocket from 550 to 950. When a stock does this, then it's bound to sort of roll over and come back. So if you just take this chart and invert it, I'd like to see, obviously not a 50% drop or a 100% drop, but a similar type of pattern on something like Dollar General. So I'd want to see this go red 5, 6, 7 days in a row before I bought it for a bounce. FN Long. So this is Fabrinet, which I'm not familiar with. Had some interesting action here. It looks like a gap up and then a fade on the 16th. What was the reason for that? Climbing after Q4 profit met expectations. So it looks like that move was potentially baked in, since it gapped up pretty significantly and then faded it all back and actually closed red. So it seems like people had kind of baked that earnings release in. Now it's sort of sitting on its previous resistance spot here. So I do like this for a long. I think it looks good. Let me just take a look at the other stuff on it. Fabrinet, so electronic equipment, low float, 34 million shares, low short interest. It's a little bit thin on volume. And looks like the only major recent news was just that earnings release. So yeah, overall it doesn't look bad. You know, keep your stop loss, I guess, underneath this 38 level. As long as it holds that, comes over 41 bucks here, you might get a run back towards those earnings day highs. There's your support, sort of. Something along those lines. FN Long. Cool, I like it. NXPI. Alright, NXPI Long. This stock has been going, I guess it's in a fairly good uptrend here. It just looks like it's been consolidating for a while. It's sort of a, similar to what we saw on UA actually. It's got sort of a big wedge forming. So similar type of pattern with this sort of triangular wedge that's forming at the edge of the chart here. Yeah, so I mean, I would want to buy this in a similar fashion to UA if I was going to swing trade it or, you know, hold it for any length of time. I sort of like the chart. It doesn't really look like it has a ton of momentum, although it does have a mild history, I guess, of making a pretty good sized run here. It looks like it ran like 10, 12 bucks a share back here. So it seems like it might have potential. It's liquid, which is good. Seems like this $90 level is probably the key. So if you're going to anticipate it, maybe off of the 200-day moving average, or if you're thinking shorter term, you know, keep your support sort of, your stop loss like sort of under here, and, you know, play it as a breakout of this flag type of thing. So there you go. There's a couple different ways you could play it. You could play it as a bounce off the 200-day moving average. You could play it as a breakout through 90 bucks with a stop under, say, 86. But overall, yeah, it just looks like it's consolidating. I don't see like a huge sort of explosive type of move out of this one, but it does look like it could potentially take off. The only thing I'd want to check is when do they have earnings? Okay, so they released earnings July 27th, so that's out of the way. Not a problem there. All right, so there's NXPI. HPE short earnings followed by immediate rebound the following day. I mean, that's pretty much just a gamble. I never gamble on earnings. You can't predict the future. You can't predict news. So I do not trade in anticipation of earnings. When are there earnings? Boink. I have a button in my software for FinViz, by the way, which is why it just kind of pops up on my screen here. So it's got 1.5 billion shares in the float. This is this is Hewlett Packard, duh. Yeah, so I mean, this thing is, I don't know. I mean, if you like gambling on earnings, I guess you could play it. It actually looks like a pretty nice long. They've got earnings on September 7th, so Wednesday of next week. Sure, if you feel like gambling, then short it and catch it immediately afterwards. But I'm going to tell you it's basically a 50-50 shot. You have no real idea what the earnings are going to be. And even if you do know what the earnings are going to be, even if you're an insider, you have no idea whether the market is going to react like you expect. I've seen companies beat earnings and the stock tanks. I actually just saw it a couple of minutes ago on, what was that one that we just looked at? Was it FN? Yeah, FN. Q4 profit met expectations on August 15th. Stock gaps up, fades all the way back, and closed red. So they actually met their expectations. The stock closed down. So you really have no idea, you know, what the earnings are, how the market's going to react to earnings. So even if you do have a good prediction in terms of earnings, you can't predict how the market's going to react to it. So what I do on these is I wait until after earnings, and then I will play accordingly. Once it kind of makes its decision after it has the earnings release, then you can play it accordingly. V.OEE, this has got to be a foreign stock. I don't even know what this is. I doubt I can even look at it. Yeah, I can't even look at this. So can't do that one, unfortunately. I only trade U.S. equities. No options, futures, Forex, equities only, no OTC or foreign companies. So there's the only reason that I say that is because I don't have access to be able to even look at foreign stocks. So I can't look at stuff from Canada. I can't look at anything. I can look at ADRs, like stuff that trades on a foreign exchange. So like Sony, for example, is an ADR, an American Depository Receipt. So I can look at these charts if they have a U.S. ticker symbol. But if they don't have a U.S. ticker symbol, I can't look at it. And if it's OTC, I just don't trade them at all. Not only do I not have the data for it, but I don't trade it because it's not regulated by the SEC in the same way. PMN Long. What is PMN? PMN looks like I do not have data for it. I can't even pull it up. Not sure what it is. Is that even a ticker? PMN? PNM? Nope. Don't even know what that is. V.NVM, can't do it. It's a foreign company. Nevada Clean. Nada. So I can't do that one. ACIA. This is a short. Is this thing still going? This is a crazy stock. By the way, this is hard to borrow on pretty much every broker. I was able to locate shares of it, but they were like literally $3 a share just to locate the shares. So practically speaking, I would not short this thing. I actually don't know anything about the company, so I don't really know if it's a short fundamentally speaking. I do know that it is very low float. It's got a huge range. So it's definitely a good trading stock. I don't know that I would short it. This actually is a pretty bullish pattern in my opinion. And I would not call this parabolic as I would with other stocks that are up a lot. I mean, this thing is up from 60 to 120 bucks or so in just a month. But it's done it in a controlled manner. It's consolidating sideways. I'd actually say this is a pretty nice long, just looking at the chart. Let's go like a 60-minute. I mean, this is a nice kind of tight squeeze for a stock that has a range of potentially $15 to $20 on an intraday basis. This is actually a pretty nice chart because you're only going to have to risk like maybe $2 a share if you keep it tight underneath this sort of 112 level. If you keep it under that, you know, if you keep your stop loss under there, you can get away with buying this thing at 113 and setting a stop loss at 110, you know, and have $3 or $4 of risk for potentially, if this thing busts highs, you know, this could run to 150, it could run to 200. You really have no limit because it's an IPO. Or at least it's a new issue. I don't know if this is like a renamed previous company, but it looks like it's an IPO. Yeah, tech IPO market. So yeah, I do not like this as a short. Not to mention it's hard to borrow, it's expensive to short it. So I would not short this thing. I would actually consider longing. It looks pretty good. When it gets very extended, you know, this thing busts 125 and runs to 150 or 175 in like 3 or 4 days, then you short it. By the way, I also like TWLO. This is kind of random, but I love this pattern. It was strong on Friday. Market was weak on Fridays, or on this last Friday here. It was just kind of, you know, it started out strong and then it kind of fizzled all day long and it closed sort of just in the middle of its range. So the market was just kind of static and maybe even a little bit weak, whereas Twilio had this very clean breakout here. It made for a great day trade through $56. It ran almost $2 a share off of that $56 breakout, and now you're right into this $58 spot on the daily chart. If it gets above 58.07, you've got resistance again at 61.35, 61.50, 64, and then 66.40-ish. So I think this is setting up for another similar type of move here, $20-30 a share if this takes off. Just a side note. Dun dun dun. Okay. BABA and CMG. I think we also covered CMG recently, but let's take a look at Alibaba and then Chipotle. Complete with plenty of E. coli for our United States customers. Alibaba, yeah, I think you'd said on a pullback. Name really interests me. A heck of a move since the earnings release. Had a little dip, got bought right back up, taking out the post-earnings release high. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, actually, we were talking about HPE. This is sort of what I mean when I say I wait until after the earnings release and then play accordingly. In this case, we can see they beat their earnings, stock consolidated sideways, it held its earnings gains, and then it kind of took off and busted the earnings day highs. So now it's confirmed that this was actually a real sort of the market believes it type of move. So this is what I like to see after an earnings beat. Or in the case of like Dollar General, we looked at earnings miss, and then it kind of went sideways for a couple days, and now it's sort of confirming that it is indeed weak. This was a real move. It was a real sell-off. So I do like to see that type of action before I make a trade. At this point, I would not buy it just because it went through earnings day highs. What I'd actually like to see is for it to either continue up for another day or two and then retest it and set up like a little bull flag or something like that above it, or I would like to see it reject this high and come back sort of into the middle of its range, sort of the middle of that earnings day range, maybe even a little bit higher than that. Probably bounce off of one of these round numbers here, like $96 or 97 or something along those lines. That's what I would like to see. Either a little pullback or some kind of confirmation that it's actually going to hold the earnings day highs. Because, you're buying the stock right now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days in a row, straight up. It's not up that much, but it is up 7 days in a row. So, I mean, anyone who bought it at 93 or 93.75 or whatever this low is here, they're going to be taking profits. I mean, it made $7 or $8 a share in just a few days. So why wouldn't you take profits on that? So take some profits, and that's going to cause a little bit of a pullback. So I'd just be waiting for either the confirmation that it's going to hold, so go sideways above that earnings day high, or pull back underneath it and buy the dip there. All right, and last one, I think. Oh yeah, Chipotle Mexican Grill. Short. It's already down 4 days in a row. Looks like it wants to retest those multi-bottom lows. Call it 385. Thinking the low doesn't hold, and that could be a really nice short. Not really sure. What's the weekly look like? It actually seems like it's sort of forming a falling wedge on the weekly chart, which to me is actually a bullish pattern. I'd actually be, one of the reasons I think this is a bullish pattern is because if you look at it, it had these lows over here of 399. It couldn't hold them here, right? So it broke through, but then it actually started to hold, right? So it suckered in a bunch of shorts here and then trapped them. And then it came back down and tried to break those lows again and sort of trapped the shorts again. So it seems like it's pulling one of these repeatedly just break lows by a few cents or a couple dollars a share or whatever, since it's a $400 stock, and then bounce off of it. So it actually seems to me, I mean, there's definitely, I don't think there's a trade in this right now. I think maybe if it comes back up and bounces off of the 200-day moving average, then, you know, it's got to get more extended. I don't really like shorting these things when they're, you know, down 4 or 5 days in a row. Just doesn't really look, to me, it doesn't look like a short. But then again, I'm more interested in different types of shorts. I prefer to short stuff like NTP, where it's gone from $5 to $10 in a couple of weeks. We have stuff like Ren, where it went from $6 to $20. These are the types of moves that I usually short. I don't typically short trending stocks, but just my thoughts, obviously. All right, so that is it. I think that's it for these ones. Let me just make sure I don't have any new messages. Refresh. All right, so we'll keep it there for this week, and then I'll be back next week to do another one. Thanks for listening, guys, and just let me know if you have any questions. All right, peace.